Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the latest on the prospects of Boris Johnson doing the unthinkable and suspending parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol unilaterally once the Stormont elections next month are over. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yeah, this is like the worst willy won't-y ever. This is much worse than Ross and Rachel. Like, according to briefings with Politics Home, there seems to be a real push to pressure Boris Johnson into what they call triggering Article 16. In reality, what they actually mean is suspending parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol that they don't like and pretending that they can do it. What I'd like to know, to avoid covering too much old ground, is what I want to do is basically focus on what the nature of this pressure is. Like, who is it from? That's what I want to know. Consider the logic of it against the background of what's already happened. Discuss the likely consequences, which may actually be complicated depending on what happens in the French elections. So first of all, where is the pressure coming from? I mean, we know that the ERG group of hard Brexit MPs want Boris Johnson to suspend the protocol. They have been quite clear about it. Several senior members of the ERG have been quite happy to publicly state that when they discussed the protocol with Johnson, when it was getting ready to time to vote for it, they voted for it because he had told them he was going to trash it when he'd left the EU. It was just there to con Parliament into voting to leave the EU, after which he would tear it up. So obviously they want him to suspend the protocol. As far as they're concerned, that's what he's promised them. But they've been wanting that for over a year now, and he has so far resisted. No doubt telling them, yeah, I'll get onto it when the time's right. So without dismissing the pressure that they will be bringing to bear, the key pressure will be within Cabinet. Now, according to Politics Home, Jacob Rees-Mogg wants Johnson to hit the button. No surprise there, he is one of the ERG posse and a bonehead who will also be personally shielded from any ramifications of such a move. Worst case scenario is it all goes tits up and he ends his political career. I mean, what? Oh dear, back to living his life of luxury it is. Suella Braverman, the Attorney General, also believed to want such a move. Again, not of great significance. Not that, she is a member of Cabinet, but because she was brought into Cabinet specifically to be an Attorney General with no respect for the law in order to allow the government to break it. I mean, the job of Attorney General is supposed to be to warn the government when it's about to break the law in order to avoid it happening. No. She's there for an entirely different purpose. Brandon Lewis was also cited. Now, this is of more serious weight because he is the Northern Ireland Secretary. If he is lobbying, for large parts of the protocol to be suspended, then there isn't anyone in Cabinet actually lobbying for the Northern Irish businesses and communities who will be badly hurt by such a move, because that's supposed to be his job. The report also mentioned that a Conservative MP who attended the party that Boris Johnson threw last week, to celebrate getting away with holding illegal lockdown parties in Downing Street, said that a Cabinet minister, not known for their hard Brexit views, insisted that the government had to, what they call, again, trigger Article 16, meaning suspend the protocol. Now, I'm not sure how much weight to place on that. Like, first of all, the Cabinet Minister was not named, but I'll get onto that. But as this insistence was in the setting of almost all the Parliamentary Conservative Party being present, it doesn't mean it's their genuinely held view. Like I say, when it comes to Brexit and Conservatives, there's a lot of this. Some of them are genuinely mad, some are just pretending to be mad. So a Cabinet Minister saying a thing to backbenchers doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're saying in Cabinet. It may not be the view that they are pushing in Cabinet. So I wouldn't ordinarily be too concerned about that. However, it does matter who said it. Like, if it was someone like Sajid Javid, you could dismiss it as someone just trying to sing from the hard Brexit hymn book because they've still got leadership ambitions, and you wouldn't really worry about if the words make any sense, because he's the Health Secretary. If, however, it's Liz Truss, well, she's the one in charge of the protocol talks. I've talked in the past about how she has approached them in the spirit of a negotiated agreement rather than the failed bully boy tactics of David Frost. But if she feels that in order to maintain support in the party, she has to at least pretend that the move has to be made, that's more serious. It's a bit like with the prospect of a no-deal Brexit before 2020. Everyone knew that a clear majority of Parliament, an overwhelming majority of Parliament, was against a no-deal Brexit. But there was still the fear that we might end up leaving without an agreement by accident. no one believed it would happen deliberately, but it could have happened by accident, that enough politicians, trapped by their own rhetoric, fearful for how the electorate might act if they started being sensible, might do nothing to stop it under certain circumstances. The same still applies, really. The Northern Ireland Protocol is the foundation of the withdrawal agreement, the so-called deal. Without it, we have the no-deal Brexit that ERG wanted all along. So what would be the consequences of suspending the protocol to the extent being discussed? Well, last November, there was a real feeling that the government intended to do just this. David Frost and Boris Johnson have both been laying the groundwork to do so and blamed the EU for months. The EU Commission and the Council took the issue seriously. David Frost claimed that the EU would ultimately do nothing because it was only a problem for Ireland, with some side issues being a problem for France. Other EU countries would not risk sacrificing their trade for the sake of this agreement. This has been the main Brexit fallacy for years. It goes right back to the German car manufacturers won't allow the EU to insist upon WTO rules being observed. It was crap then, it's crap now. The single market is what gives the EU and each individual member its power and influence around the world. It is what allows them to set standards around the world. It's what keeps them together. Although the EU has been flexing political muscles in recent years, and that has stepped up in the wake of the Russian war against Ukraine, it derives everything from the single market. They obviously cannot allow that to be compromised, or it all falls apart. So last November, we saw reports that Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, Italy, and a few other major economies in the EU were talking about dissolving the trading cooperation agreement if the UK government dissolved the core elements of the withdrawal agreement. It would also be perfectly legal as well. It wouldn't be countering one breaking of an international treaty with another. No, this would be legal. Because the Brexiteers are scared of commitment, the trading cooperation agreement is actually very loose. The withdrawal agreement isn't, but the trading cooperation agreement is. It wasn't that important to the EU. It allows either side to just decide they don't want it after all and dissolve it. Boris Johnson was advised that the EU would never want to do this, so he considered the facility entirely at his disposal. But hearing major EU countries, not just Ireland or France, saying that this caused, that they would dissolve it, that caused a hasty change in policy. All of a sudden, the rhetoric on Article 16 was dialed down. David Frost had to rewrite a speech where he instead talked about wanting a negotiated outcome. Then he quit at the end of last year, no doubt because he knew there was no outcome that would please the hardline Brexiteers, to whose mast he had nailed his colours, and perhaps also because Johnson was badly wounded by the by-election in North Shropshire, in his sense that maybe another leader may take over soon. As this has not happened, Frost has remained on the sidelines shouting advice at the current players like a drunken football fan. I may even do a video on his latest rant at some point this week, not sure yet. But if Johnson starts making noises about going back to this idea of Article 16, we can expect the EU countries dusting off the plans that they were discussing last November. So these for me are the key questions. First, is Boris Johnson seriously going to reconsider suspending parts of the protocol? Second, if so, what does he think has changed since last November? Because here's where I have difficulty. If Johnson was genuinely under serious pressure to do this, why didn't he do it a month or so ago? After all, the DUP were desperate for him to do it in order to give them a boost for the Stormont elections. Too late now. Although the elections haven't happened, we're into purdah where the government can't now announce new policies for fear of interfering in an election campaign. I know Boris Johnson isn't one for rules, but it makes no sense to break them when there's no personal gain. So nothing's going to be announced until May the 6th at least now, and you would think not until Sunday, May the 8th, because Boris Johnson likes to announce major policies to the press rather than Parliament, and so it's mostly weekends when we find things out. And it may not even be the weekend after the elections. But wouldn't the EU position be just the same? You would assume so. It's tempting to think, of course it would. Ukraine doesn't change anything. In fact, it makes it harder for Johnson to make a move that will turn the rest of Europe against him. This is just one more reason why I find the concept difficult to believe. Not impossible, because the Tories are tying themselves in knots with Brexit. They keep insisting on some magical outcome at the end of the road that is completely impossible to achieve. There is every prospect of them doing something stupid if sufficiently cornered by their own nonsense. But I still find it difficult to believe that Boris Johnson, who was already under pressure last November, would make the desperate move in May that he would not 6 months earlier. Unless France makes things different. You know, with the French presidential elections a bit up in the air, you know. But come the Stormont elections, France will have chosen its next president. It will either be a second term for Macron, in which case it's business as usual for the EU, or it could be Le Pen, in which case all bets are off. As much as it grieved me to see Eurosceptics in charge of our politics as EU members, they did at least not make a mess of EU matters. They behaved with rather more decorum than I expect Marine Le Pen to do. For example, after the 2016 referendum result, the Conservatives just agreed not to involve themselves in EU decisions at the council level. We even gave up our turn for the presidency, which was bloody stupid, but you could at least argue it was noble. Le Pen intends to interfere. Bringing the system down from within will be absolutely part of her playbook. It may well be that Johnson will be easier to persuade of the safety in triggering Article 16, as they put it, if France is led by an anti-EU president who's causing lots of trouble within the EU itself. But those are my thoughts so far. It might well be that there is pressure building on Johnson to go past the point of no return on the protocol against a possible background of Stormont unable to assemble. I mean, that all depends on who comes out top. Like, you know, the polling keeps suggesting that Sinn Féin will become the largest party, at which point it might well be that the DUP refuse to take their seats and Stormont remains in mothballs. It's not guaranteed. The DUP could still end up being the largest party. I've seen it reported in some Irish media that it may just end up being that voters, although they clearly do not like the DUP, rather than switching support to the UUP or for moderates, the Alliance Party, maybe they just decide they hate Sinn Féin more, and actually you end up with the opposite happening. People see the DUP, or unionists see the DUP as the lesser of evils. I don't know. But there is that potential for Stormont to be unable to assemble, and the potential for France being led by a Frexiteer, even though she's... Don't try and tell me Le Pen is no longer a Frexiteer. Just because the smarter anti-EU activists have stopped talking about leaving the EU for campaign purposes doesn't mean they've changed their minds. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.